We're good to go.
So, as I was thinking about the topic today, I was reminded of a time when I was in graduate school and my advisor arranged for me to give a talk to the department. And I assumed it was going to be the other students in the department. But as the room started to fill up, I realized it was all the heads of the department and the faculty. And I started to freeze. My mouth got dry as cotton. And when I opened my mouth, I couldn't make a sound. And I remember feeling how mortified I was and scared and not sure what I was going to do. Finally, this was back in 1992. We didn't carry water bottles around with us at the time, but my advisor noticed I was struggling, brought me some water, which gave me my sound back. But I never felt like I even knew what I said that day. I just remember thinking, that was awful. And I crawled home to my bed. I covered up my head and I stayed there for the rest of the day. And I learned two important things that day. One is that you can't speak without saliva in your mouth. And two, I hated public speaking and I vowed never to do it again. And I never did for 20 years. It shook my confidence. I stopped trusting in myself to articulate the value of my work, and it limited my ability to draw people around me, to draw a following of students. And it also clouded my vision of how to even bring people into my fold. And unfortunately, 3 years later, I quit my teaching. And that experience taught me that staying invisible has a cost. I found a way to adjust because I was very introverted. So I did my introverted things. I actually sounds non-introverted, but I was a performer with a women's world music group, and that was a few performances a month. But that never involved speaking for me. It was movement, which felt comfortable. I didn't have to open up my mouth. So that's all to say there were some places where I felt I allowed myself to be visible, but not in my dream. My dream to like make an impact through my work, which at the time was in dance movement therapy for personal development. So this is what I found that staying invisible
No,
has a
no,
cost.
no.
It has missed opportunities for growth and advancement and connection. It means staying unseen. It means that your expertise and contributions go unrecognized. People can't follow you, learn from you, buy from you if they don't know you exist. And I know that you need to be more visible, and that's part of why you're here this week and why you're here today. But I want you to think about which kinds of things, perhaps like me, have ever held you back. Fear of judgment, like, who am I to do this? I'm not good enough. I'm not as good as that other person. They have it all together. Or worried about being seen as arrogant or boastful, or my voice sounds awful, or gosh, I have to lose weight first. Or maybe being out there just like promoting yourself just feels kind of icky and you don't know how to do it in a way that feels like it aligns with you. Or maybe like me, as I experienced that day in graduate school, it was just fear of, that just shut me down. So maybe the problem isn't visibility itself. It's our relationship to it, and it's the invisible forces holding you back from it. And today I want to show you how to remove those invisible forces that hold you back from visibility. So in 2015, I decided that I had enough of organic farming. I was sitting in the field one day, weeding my onions. I grew produce for local restaurants, and it was like an introvert's paradise. And I'm listening to a module on business and building your own business and building the right business for you. And all of a sudden, I realized, oh my God, I let go of that dream 20 years ago that I wanted to make an impact. And then I thought, yeah, I left that because I thought that's just grandiose. Who am I to want to be so significant? But I realized that this was something that was beyond me. It was like this force inside me, and I had this feeling that if I got to the end of my life and I didn't try to figure out what that impact could be, that I'd die with regret. And so on that day, I decided I was going to discover what it was that I could contribute and and do what I could to make an impact. So I took a course in online coaching in coaching. I became an online coach. I built my website. And of course, once you do that, you need to let people know that you're there. So I started to take video classes. This was back in 2015. I found video extremely awkward. I think I did the class 3 times before I decided to make a public video on my YouTube channel. And I remember spending a whole evening making this video, and I sent it to an entrepreneur friend, and she said, Linda, the content's really good, but it doesn't sound like you. Like, who is that person speaking? And I thought, oh no, I'm not even like showing up as my authentic self. And how can I put this out there? And again, all this like worry of like, what is it to be authentic, and how can I be authentic, and being embarrassed to show up and be visible. That week, my video mentor said to me, or said to the whole group, there's this amazing new app that's going to change the online space forever. It's called Periscope, and it does something called live streaming. And if you get on now, you can be an early adopter. But know that if you do it, you got to do it every day. So I thought, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get on every day. I'm going to be an early adopter. I'm going to build my following. And that first day when I punched in what I was going to talk about, and guys, this app had 0 algorithm. That means that you could look at a map, and if I press broadcast, a light would blink on and off, and people anywhere in the world could say, oh, who's that person in Boston? I wonder what they're talking about. So when I'm looking at my phone, I'm seeing people come on the screen from India and Turkey and France and England and California and Canada. And my blood pressure was rising all again. I felt like I was becoming disembodied from myself, and my mouth got dry. I was hyperventilating. No one said how terrifying this live streaming stuff was going to be. But you know what? I thought I can handle this because I have my master's degree in expressive arts therapy. I'm a dance movement therapy background. I have all these tools that will help me to get through. Plus, I have Google. I can Google how to get over my fear. So I Googled, pretend your fear is excitement. And I thought, I love how that sounds. But when I thought about it, what came to me is I know the difference between fear and excitement, and this is not excitement. And then, don't think of yourself, think of your audience. And I do love that. I think that's what we're here for, is to serve. But it's hard to do when you're hyperventilating. And then the third thing was feel the fear and do it anyway. And I thought, you know what? That's the best I can do right now. So I gathered all these tools, meditation, affirmations, deep breathing, power poses, you name it. I tried it. And every day I was able to get on and do the live stream thinking, after a few weeks, I'll be fine. I'll be calm. I'll be confident. And the weeks went by this way, and I got to week 10, day 75. I'm about to press broadcast. And all of a sudden I realized, why is my heart still pounding? It was pounding as hard as it was that very first week. And I wondered, what is wrong with me? Or maybe, what is wrong with what people have been telling me? Because clearly, getting 75 days of live streaming under my belt didn't lead to a place of confidence. I didn't want to continue to manage this fear. I was showing up every day. I could show up for a while more, but for how much longer? When would I get tired of this? I didn't want to manage it. I wanted to get rid of it. So that's what I decided to do. And I closed my eyes and asked, if the fear could talk, what would it say? And what came back was, you're going to be attacked. And suddenly I remembered times when I was a kid and mom yelling at my two older sisters saying, why can't you girls be more like Linda? She does what I tell her. If I ask her to put away her clothes, she does it right away. Now, I'm saying this in a kind of a pleasant-ish voice. Mom was yelling at my sisters. They hated that, of course. So as soon as her back was turned, they charged, kicked me in the shins. They call me stupid, say shut up. And suddenly it was, duh, of course I'm not comfortable getting on camera. Of course I'm not being visible. I'm not comfortable being visible or speaking from the stage because there's a part of me that remembered it was dangerous to be put in the center of attention. It was dangerous to be put in the center of attention. So if you have resistance somewhere or you have anxiety somewhere, getting on video or pressing send or posting that Facebook post or sending out that email, maybe you have a memory like this too. It might not have been that you had sisters who were jealous of you, but have you ever been bullied, had a mean teacher who didn't get you, ever felt ridiculed, rejected, excluded, shamed, had a performance that didn't go well? If you got messages that said children should be seen and not heard, or not good to brag, don't draw attention to yourself, keep your head down, who do you think you are? If you had any of these messages or experiences, these are going to impact your willingness, your delight in being visible. So I ask you all to consider investigating your resistance, investigating the root causes of your fear, and seeing what you find. And when you find those things, when you identify those things, take some time to clear them away. And what do I mean by this? My framework for working with people to get from a place of dread to delight in their visibility is called the Inner Freedom Framework. And the first part is reveal and heal. So we want to reveal what are those things that are blocking our way from feeling totally comfortable and free to put ourselves out there. The experiences you had, the messages you received. And then we need to heal them. And when I think of healing, what I think of is deactivating them so they no longer feel like they are running the show, so that they no longer feel like we're getting triggered in some way. And the way we do that is by changing the relationship we have to it. Because when we have a memory, just think about this. When you have a memory, it usually comes up in the same way. It's like it's on repeat. But when we want to interrupt the pattern, we add new things to it. We might do things like use emotional freedom technique. People know that as EFT or tapping. We might do some forgiveness. We might do journaling. We might do creative visualization where we talk to our younger selves and tell that younger person, that younger girl, what we love and appreciate about them, what we want them to know, or what we wished they had known at the time when these experiences happened or when these messages were received. How would you like to teach or mentor that younger you so that in this point in time, you could feel free, you could feel yourself, you could feel not worried about what other people think of you, not caring what they think of you, not caring for people, but not caring what they think of you, for not being worried about being judged. So this, I have found, is a key element to allowing ourselves to put ourselves out there. Whether you're afraid of speaking on video or on camera, or you're afraid of pressing broadcast and putting your words and your ideas out, or writing a book. So that's number one. Number two is we need to restore a sense of safety inside our heads, because All these things that I talked about, these are external forces. But what do we tell ourselves? I had a client who, on the way to giving a talk that she was invited to, so people wanted her, she had this ongoing dialogue in her head. You're not a good speaker. Who do you think you are? You think people want to listen to you? You're dull and boring. Now, folks, if someone is telling you these things, you would probably say, get away from me. I don't want to have this toxicity. But when we have these voices in our heads, they sometimes feel so familiar to us that we don't even notice they're there. So it is up to us to figure out, what are we telling ourselves? Are we telling ourselves things that are going to uplift us, build our confidence, give us that strength to do hard things and put ourselves out there? Or are we working against ourselves? Are we making it harder for us to be vulnerable, to stand up in front of a group of people, to get on, an environment like this and speak to a crowd that, potentially hundreds will listen to? We need to be our staunchest advocate, our biggest supporter. So there are a couple of ways, though, that we can find to use this. If it's difficult to know what thoughts are in our head, start paying attention to what you think while you're trying to put yourself out there, or while you're even making a post, or while you're even making a video. I have a program, the Delight in the Limelight Accelerator, and one of the modules is getting comfy on camera. And we have an exercise or a week in there where we look at how to watch ourselves on video without cringing. And this is what I love about it. Because when we watch ourselves on video, it's so easy to find things that we don't like. You can even do the same thing in front of a mirror. But getting on video is great because it's not just how we look, it's also how we sound and how we use our body and our energy. I mean, there's so many things to criticize. And this is what we do. We allow ourselves to write down all the things we hate about what we see and hear. Why? Because if we don't know what is in that mental closet of ours, there's no way that we can clean it up. I call it a psychic closet. It's a term that I borrowed from the psychologist Carl Jung, who talked about the unconscious, what was the word? Subjective unconscious. Anyway, he is all about bringing the unconscious into the light. So I call it the psychic closet. Let's see what's in the psychic closet. So once we see what those things are, then we can do different things with it. We can bucket them and say, well, what are some things we can change? And if we can change them, why be angry? Let's just do it. And if they can't be changed, let's see how we can accept and honor those things. Other things that we can do is rewatch those videos, and instead of finding fault, let's find what we like and appreciate. And I make it into a game. So let's say we had 10 things that we didn't like in the video. Then I say you must find 10 plus 1. And it may sound crazy, or maybe you nod your heads, but if you try to find something good, it takes so much longer. And yet this is the key. We need to learn to find the good. So watch that video 3 times if you need to, in order to make those 10 things that you can find that you like and appreciate. All right, so that we have reveal and heal, and we have restore safety inside our heads. And the third thing we need to do is to find those ways that we want to bring ourselves out into the world. Because what is our authentic self? Is our authentic self the one that has been afraid to put ourselves out? The one that has been conditioned and programmed that it's not okay to be seen, that you're not good enough, that you're not smart enough or young enough or old enough or experienced enough or pretty enough? Or is it the authentic self that loves, accepts, and honors who you are right now, who decides you're going to forge your own path forward, that you're going to have your own journey. It's not going to look like anybody else's, but that your voice deserves to be heard. Obviously, to me, the answer is the latter. It's going to be our how we want to be. It's going to include who we've been. We can evaluate what do I like that I have developed from all the experiences of my life, the good and the bad. For instance, I like that in my hesitation, in my invisibility, I learned to be a great listener. I learned how to make people feel comfortable and safe with me because I was non-judgmental. That was a practice of mine. So, yes, take the treasures from the past, but also ask yourself, what else might I like to be? For instance, I'm thinking of another story. I took a writing week training called Gateless Writing. And at the end, the leader of the group said, I'm going to call out everybody's name. We were in a huddle with our arms around each other. It was very sweet. I'm going to call each person's name one at a time. And I want you to like popcorn out the words that you think, of when you hear this person's name and when you think of who they are in their presence here. And when it came to my name, I heard soft, warm, inviting, safe, joyful, these very kind of wonderful, lovely things. But there was a part inside me that said, somebody say, please, fun, wacky, playful, something bold, something that was a little stronger in its energy. And I realized in that moment that if I wanted to be seen in those ways, I needed to cultivate those aspects of myself. And I believe we all have those aspects, but they are untapped. They're untapped because we get conditioned to express ourselves in certain ways because of the feedback we've gotten, because of the lessons we've received, because of the models that we've had that we've copied around us. What we want to do is expand our repertoire. It's kind of like if you cook and you only have if you don't have any spices in your kitchen at all, maybe not even salt and pepper. And then suddenly you have salt and pepper and oregano and cumin and turmeric and ginger and garlic. And you may not use all of those things every day, but it's nice to have them that you can pull out and use. So when the third part of the Inner Freedom Framework is repatterning your habits. And I mean repatterning your habits in the energy that you bring, repatterning in the way you use your voice, the way we keep rules for ourselves. Like you may feel like, well, when you walk down the street, you got to just walk and you don't look people in the eye, or maybe you do look people in the eye, but you don't skip, you don't turn around, you don't laugh out loud, you don't sing. But who says? Whose rules are those? My daughter lived in New York City for a while, and she said she loved living there because there's so many wacky people that she felt totally comfortable, like singing down the street. Nobody even looked at her. And if they did, what do we care? It's kind of like, oh, I wish I could be like that. We always are expecting the worst from people. What if we expect the best? So another part of repatterning our habits is our vocal expression. And we tend to think that our voices, our speaking voices, are fixed. They are not. I have completely transformed the sound of my voice. I used to speak with vocal fry. Vocal fry is like this when you're kind of like hanging back in your throat and you just kind of your vocal folds are like crackly, rumbly. And I didn't do it all the time, but I did it a lot like this at the end of sentences. And it wasn't until it was pointed out to me that I did that I began to realize, oh, that is something I could actually change. And as I began to work on chapter 11 of my book, Delight in the Limelight, it was the breath we take and the sounds we make, all of a sudden I realized in the writing of that chapter that I could go even further. I could create a different resonance in my sound. I could create more diction in my enunciation. I could create more dynamics in my delivery. Dynamics meaning how we emphasize words, how we pause between words, how we use volume where we get softer or we get louder, or maybe we even go into like this kind of twangy sound, which, by the way, is an excellent way to speak when you're in a noisy environment to save your voice. When I'm in front of a microphone, I have the opportunity to speak in a quieter voice that is more round and resonant. These are all ways that we can expand what it means to be authentically ourselves. And what I love about paying attention to dynamic delivery and the sound of our voice is that it gives us the ability to be what I like to call a tour guide. Here's what's good about being a tour guide. You are thinking about the audience. You are thinking about how you want to make it easier for them to understand what you are saying. And so you slow down a bit, you enunciate better, you emphasize the words that you think are going to be significant so that they can understand it better. And you also have some attention to giving some variety so that it doesn't feel like the same sound is happening over and over like you would in a meditation audio where you want to put people into a state of relaxation or you want to put them to sleep. You don't want to always have the same cadence. You want to change it up. You want to keep people awake. So this gives us the opportunity to do better for our audience, but it also gives you the opportunity to do better for yourself, because this is what happens when you are mindfully, somatically, viscerally aware of your voice. It keeps you in the present moment. It keeps you in a physical sensation of vibration in your body and in the sound of your voice. And isn't it funny that we have, I don't know about in Britain, but I would imagine it's there too. But in the US, we have this saying of, oh, that person loves the sound of their voice. And it's a put down. It means that they don't have any awareness that there are other people around that want to share the airspace, that they take it all up. But what does that kind of message tell us? That it's not good to love the sound of our voice. And I think this is wrong. It's not just misguided, it's damaging to us because speaking and our voices are our human design. And who is trying to tell us that we shouldn't love our voice? If you have children, or if you know children, especially around 2, 3, 4, 5, you know they love the sound of their voice. They love playing with sounds. But then we start to program them in school. Shh, be quiet. Use your indoor voice. That sounds awful. Don't speak like that. And all of a sudden, we start to become inhibited. Not just that, but we tend to move up into our intellect because that's where school brings us into our heads. And so we lose that joy of what it means to express ourselves. Talking, using our voice, expressing ourselves is fun, people. It is a lot of fun. And that's why I call my book and my programs Delight in the Limelight, because I want people to rediscover the joy of speaking, of expressing yourselves, of putting yourself out there, of being visible, because each of us has a unique perspective and every voice deserves to be heard. Every voice deserves to be heard, and every word deserves to be heard. All right. So I just want to share with you something that happened to me after I was able to clean up my stuff. First of all, I delighted that I didn't have to deal with that racing heart that anxiety, the dry mouth, all those symptoms, because all those symptoms were so demanding of my attention. And I didn't even realize it until they weren't there anymore. Because when I wasn't having to manage my shaking hands or my shaking voice, I suddenly felt like I could pay attention to my audience. I could pay attention to how I delivered my words and the energy that I brought, and maybe some eye contact or how I used my body. It's like we have limited mental bandwidth, and when you're focused in any part on what do people think of me, or oh my God, my heart's pounding, that's taking away from your attention somewhere else. So that was number one. Number two, obviously, it gave me a purpose, a very singular purpose to the impact I personally wanted to make, because it became clear, not right away, it took me about a year to realize this is what I want to help people with. Because I had been trained as a life coach, so I wanted to help people in all kinds of ways. All kinds of ways. Not just helping people overcome their fear of speaking or getting on camera or putting themselves out there. But as the year went by, and as I shared that this was something I'd done for myself, and people said, oh, do you think it would work for me? And I said, well, I don't know, let's try. And it did work. Suddenly, I realized that maybe this is something that I could do. So that was a huge, huge thing. And the other huge thing was I had been Googling how to get over my nerves. I never saw anyone talk to me about or suggest it's connected to stuff from the past. And if you clear that past stuff, your fear will go away. And I thought, oh my God, I want people to know this, because if they've been trying all those things that I tried and it didn't work for them, or it didn't get them all the way through to the other side, I want to offer my part of the conversation. And I think this is important for you too, because everybody has their perspective. What works for you is important for others to hear. That's how humanity actually grows and develops. So don't diminish your voice. Don't diminish your opinion. Don't diminish your stance. Even the things that you don't like that other people do. I don't like when people say, feel the fear and do it anyway. I say, no, don't do that. Not everyone will agree with me, but that's my stance. Look, I know there are times that you got to feel the fear and do it anyway. I once went on a hike, and the leader said, okay, now we're going to jump down into this gorge. It's three stories high. I was literally scared shitless. I found a bush to get behind before I had to do the deed, but I had to do it. So I did it. And sometimes we have to give a talk. Sometimes we have to give a toast. Sometimes we have to get that email out to launch our program, or we're asked to give a presentation and we haven't, taken time to do our homework to clear stuff away. Sometimes that will happen, but don't dismiss it. Don't ignore your fear. Over time, you are doing yourself a disservice. Rant. That's my rant. Okay. So what else did it do for me? It gave me the freedom to choose and try out different things. So I joined a program called Impacting Millions with a woman named Selena Sue, similar to what you're doing here. And she had us look at writing blog posts for other people's websites. I don't know if people even still do that. Maybe to some degree they do. And getting on podcasts and getting on TV and other ways in the media. And I remember I had gotten on some podcasts, I'd written some blog posts, I had been, writing media things, but I thought I haven't been on TV. And I thought, I want to do that before the end of the year. I think it was the beginning of December, back in 2016. And I thought, I don't know if I can actually get on like real TV, but what about cable? So I started to Google local cable stations, and I didn't see anything for women, business, entrepreneurs, nothing. And I thought, well, maybe I should start a TV show for female entrepreneurs. So I called up my local cable station and I said, is it possible for me to start a TV show for this way, in this way? And he said, well, why don't you come in tomorrow and we'll talk about it. So I went in. 20 minutes later, I had a TV show. I started the very next week, and I invited any female entrepreneur that I met and enjoyed. I said, come on my show and you can have a TV experience. That was an amazing new opportunity for me. Or then I started to take speaking programs so I could learn to be a speaker. And I hired people to help me build a keynote. And I got on stages. And this year I've been doing a ton of podcasts. Podcasts are wonderful. It's a wonderful way to learn how do you like to talk about your talking points, the things that you think about. There are so many people who are just starting out. They're very low stakes. And if you do it a lot, like I do 2 to 5, I don't recommend 5 podcasts a week. I did that a few weeks ago and I was totally burned out. But 2 or 3 a week, or even 1 or 2 a month, you are building up your credibility. You're building up your speaking chops, your speaking skills, and you are slowly building a following. So the other thing that is great that I learned is that there are so many different ways to share being visible. You don't just have to share all your wins. Wins are wonderful. Like when I came out with my book, I wanted to share that, but I didn't wait for that. I said, I'm trying to figure out which cover do I like? And so I had people voting on my cover. And then I said, I'm not sure about the title. What do you think about the title? People gave me their information about the title. Now, of course, I'm still making my own decisions. But do you see, I can share my process. So you share your wins, but you share your process. And when you share your wins, you can share it in a way that doesn't feel icky, but it's like, wow, I spent 4 years writing this book, finally published. Or I couldn't have done it without my writing coach and without people who did advanced reading and gave me feedback, or working with all these other people. So there are ways to share it that are not just like, woohoo, look at me. Although occasionally you may want to do that, but there are ways to share it as this is my journey. And we all have our own journeys. And yes, come celebrate with me. You can also share what I learned is that I have opinions. I can share my opinions. I can share what I think people should be looking at or thinking about. And I can also share what I'm struggling with. And hey, who knows this and who knows that? Can you help me out? So I invite other people to support me. So there are all kinds of ways that we can be visible. That is not just about, hey, look at me, but it's like, hey, I found something. Hey, this was an interesting experience. What about you? Or what are you thinking about this? I'm wondering about this. So we can be ourselves and be more of ourselves in our visibility journey, not just all the glossy cover shots of ourselves. Take selfies. Learn to take a few that you are comfortable putting out there. I know for years I didn't because I thought, oh my God, I don't know how to do it. But just watch a YouTube on how to take selfies and start experimenting. When I write a post now, I almost always just take a selfie afterwards. I might take 5 or 6 and I pick one and I say, oh, it's good enough. Good enough. And sometimes I even post ones that I don't have any makeup on because I just say, I'm going to challenge myself to put out something without makeup. Because that's the real me, and I don't always want to show up that way, but I want to show up sometimes that way because I want that for me is important. It doesn't mean that you have to do it. Everyone's choices and everyone's journey is going to be different. But when you stop resisting visibility and instead remove those invisible forces that are holding you back, everything changes. The fear disappears and showing up becomes natural. And the world needs your voice. Let's make sure that it's heard. Thank you. So now I would love to open up to any questions that you have. And, Angela, if you want to, be the voice of the audience and ask any questions that you have, I'd be happy for that too.
I first want to grab that quote because that was beautiful. What did you say? The world needs your voice, so let's show up and be heard. Is that what you said?
The world needs your voice, so let your voice be heard, I think
Let
is
your
what I
voice,
said. Make
let,
sure your voice is heard.
let your voice. I'm
Let's
typing.
make sure the world needs your voice. Let's make sure it's heard.
Love it. I'm typing this and putting in the chat for us all so we can go and quote you afterwards. The world needs your voice. Let's make sure it's heard. Is that right?
That's correct.
Got it. Popping it in the chat, but I'm going to use this as a quote when we do feedback. That's beautiful. Thank you.
You're
Um,
welcome.
there's so much gold in there. There's so much for us, to digest here. But I really do want everybody to have an opportunity to ask their questions because I know we're all at different places in our visibility journey. So, ladies, don't be shy. Just unmute and ask. If you don't want to do that, then pop it in the chat and I'll read it out for you. But I really would love us to learn from Linda's experience. We have one. Okay. Kirsten, what did you say? It's been great timing. The other day I read "Stop being so passive with your voice," and this also resonates. So that's so true. And a lady who had to leave left a lovely comment for you, Linda. She said, "This is gold. Need to drop off into another meeting. Thank you for the content. It resonated and aligned to what I do with helping people develop stress resilience to up, down, regulate their nervous system to bring out the best in your personal work life." So she said, "Love this. Thank you."
Yes, yes.
Linda has a question. You please just unmute and ask.
I didn't want to just jump in there, Angela. You were
Jump
having.
in.
Oh,
Jump in.
thanks, Linda. That was amazing. I really, really took a lot from that. I found it really invaluable. I guess my question is twofold. One is I have an accent. I think Angela, you and I have a similar accent
We
there.
do, don't we?
So I wanted to get your views on how I feel accents are quite unique and quite make people individual, and I quite like them, but sometimes get a little bit of resistance back from an accent. So I wondered what your thoughts were with your experience. And I feel I'm quite a confident speaker. However, recently the menopausal brain's been kicking in, and we have these kind of empty phases where there's absolutely nothing clunking around in there. How do you fill those gaps, or have you any suggestions on how you can fill a gap when you're trying to retract back where you're coming from when you're
Yeah.
having something to say? Yeah.
Yeah. So there are two questions there. The first one, so when you say you've gotten some kind of feedback on the accent, what does that mean?
I think people kind of deem the accent as sometimes quite harsh. So I really liked what you said there about being a tour guide. So I think what I've tried to do is slow down my conversation, slow down how I talk, because I have a natural habit of speaking quickly. So I think and by doing that, that kind of softens the accent a wee bit.
I
Um,
think, yeah, okay. So let's keep it at that. So you're absolutely right that it's not so much an accent that is hard for anyone. And of course, people speak English all over the world and numerous accents. What we want is for people to understand us. And what you said, I loved what you said. You have a habit of speaking. We all have our habits of speaking. And some of us speak very slow, some of us speak very fast, some of us rush over certain sounds, but not other sounds. So what I recommend, like in my accelerator, I have a vocal program called Love and Transform Your Voice. One of the things that we do is that we slow a sentence down. We slow a sentence down. We slow a sentence down. We slow a sentence down so we can feel the vowel sounds. I said every voice deserves to be heard. Another time I said every word deserves to be heard. In this class, I say every vowel deserves to be heard. Because what happens is we skip over certain words very quickly and then people don't actually hear it, and it makes their brains have to work hard. And I think that's what people don't like in accents or find difficult about accents, is that their brain has to work too hard. But if you are allowing every syllable to be heard, and of course you don't speak like this, but speaking like that allows your mind to become aware of what vowel shapes your mouth is taking. And if you also at the same time are listening for the ring, the resonant, the singing of every vowel, then when you go to speak more quickly, you are still in that state of letting every vowel sing, every vowel ring. And that will bring so much more articulation to your voice.
That's so interesting. Sorry, I just want to interject there. It's so interesting because I learned that in singing. That was one of the first things that Frank Sinatra said he learned in singing. The very first thing he learned was to emphasize the vowels when he was singing. So
that's
anyway,
right.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we hang out on the consonants, and the consonants kind of interrupt the vowel sound. And in singing, they do say, get off the consonants and get into the vowel. Yes, yes. But the consonants we also want to understand and appreciate and enjoy. And we do that in the Delicious Diction in my work too. So slow down your speech and enjoy the different parts. I'll give you one other tip for the voice is, if you take one sentence, say it in a gazillion different ways. Take one sentence and say it in a gazillion different ways. Take one sentence and say it in a gazillion different ways. So emphasize it in lots of different ways. And when you've done that, deconstructed that with a number of sentences, then you begin to feel like every sentence can have a different way of being expressed. And that's how you create dynamics and contrast in your speaking. And I think that's going to help you, Linda, with and all of us. Me too. I mean, this is not something that I get once and then I'm done, but it's something that I practice and I keep in my awareness all the time. So the second question is what to do with the blank out. Now, if you're blanking out of fear, it's stuff. You got to clear your stuff. Where have I felt? What was my relationship with my parents? Did I ever feel dismissed? Did I feel like they were interested and supported me? If no, that's stuff that's got to be cleared. Did I ever have a bad experience in school or with classmates? If yes, you got to clear that stuff away. But if, as Linda says, she's always felt comfortable speaking, but now her mind is not quite as sharp or present, there are several things you can do. Number one, maybe practice some meditation. There are some focusing. If you get my book, there are free resources that come with it. And one of it is an exercise called pacing. And it's something called Brain Gym. And it's what I used to do and I still do, to bring my brain into focus. There are things we can do to bring our brains into focus before we speak. I have a whole little program called the Speaker Green Room, where we do vocal warm-up, physical warm-up, mental focusing, chakra meditation, all these things to get us into the zone so we're present and focused and grounded. So those are things you can do. However, things do happen, and we should expect them to happen. We should expect that we're going to get distracted or that we're going to forget something. And so my recommendation is to be prepared. So if I forget where I am, and it's a live performance, a live talk, I'll say, I just lost my train of thought. Where was I? And that invites audience participation. 3 people will say, oh, you were doing this. And I go, oh, thanks. And then I just move on. If I don't have that opportunity, I may say, need a drink of water.
Oh, that's a good one.
Okay? Or let me just check my notes. Or I might say, oh, where was I? Just give me a minute. So prepare yourself for these kinds of things to happen. There are other things that will happen. Like, I don't use notes generally when I give a live talk. But there'll be times that I'll have prepared a certain section And then I'll realize, oh, I totally left that section out. What do you do? Well, if you feel your audience can live without it, just live without it. You can live without it too. If you feel like it needs to be in there, just keep your brain open for a place to reinsert it. Does that answer your question?
That's perfect. And I've ordered your book, so I look forward to reading that. So,
Oh,
yeah.
great. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
We have time for one more question. So Veronica's hand's been up for a while. Do you want to ask your question, Veronica?
Yes, Angela, I'd love to. Thank you very much. And Linda, thank you so much for your presentation. It, in many ways, took me down memory lane because I remembered many decades ago, sorry, I need to confess that, I used to be a member of a Toastmasters club, and I joined Toastmasters International several, well, as I said, many years ago. And because it's a club that is meant to operate in a supportive environment along with guided projects, you get the opportunity to not only practice your effective communication skills, but also to learn how to organize a speech and prepare for a speech and so forth. And that has helped me tremendously over the years because it also reminded me that there's a power in the pause. So it's not always about keeping the flow going. There are times when that pause, that silence can be deliberate in that you want to ensure people realize you've stopped speaking suddenly. And then that can bring them back to you. And then there are other times it can be used for effect or dramatic effect.
Right.
So, but my question is, sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Yeah. As I was saying, my question is less about the speech craft part of it and more about the promotion, because if I need to deliver whatever it is I'm delivering, I have the knowledge, expertise, and insights to engage and to share that information. But this is very much as a business owner to go out there and to say, here I am, or here I've shared, or behind the scenes. And when you spoke about taking action to go and get your TV show and getting on podcasts, I'd love to hear from you some basic tips as to where can we find, or where can I find opportunities for podcast guests. I know you can do a internet, or I imagine that you can ask AI to help, but drawing on your experience, how would you suggest action be taken to actually start raising the profile, both in the audio as well as the video way, whether that's TV or a podcast?
Yes. Well, let me start with the first thing you said about like if you're giving a talk, as soon as somebody invites you, like for this, I could say, hey, I'm so excited that someone just reached out to me to do this talk in blah, 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 and it's going to be on this. And so you can start right away, or you can even the week before, hey, my talk is coming up. I'm just pulling my notes together. Uh, you know, whatever it is, talking to ChatGPT about, like refining what I want to say or whatever that you may be. I don't know if you all use ChatGPT yet. I think it's an amazing tool, so I recommend it. With podcasts, then of course, like today, I'm going to say something that I was here today. Or I don't know if I'll do it today, but this week I'll definitely mention that I got to speak to all of you and how wonderful it was and what it meant for me, as well as maybe what I think it meant for you too, or the feedback I got. As far as podcasts go, there are lots of different ways to do it. Yes, you can go to ChatGPT and ask. What I like to do is I look at other people in my industry who are kind of at my level, and I Google what podcasts have they been on. And so it's called Follow the Leader. So I'll see, and maybe it's maybe not necessarily people who are speaking, but like I have friends who have written a book called Good Awkward, or The Invisibility Factor, or these kinds of things that are in the corporate world. And I'll just see what podcasts have they been on. And then I will reach out to those podcast hosts and say, hey, notice you had my friend on. I would love to be on and share about XYZ. And this is the thing that when you pitch to podcasts, you want to let them know what you would love to share with their audience and what you think would be helpful for their audience. In fact, I think I got this invitation through reaching out, Angela, to you for a podcast,
You did.
right?
Absolutely.
And I'm pretty sure I said, I said, I think this is what people struggle with, and this is what I'd like to talk about.
Yeah.
And you reached back to me. So yes, this follow the leader thing is number one. And then anytime I come across a podcast and I think, oh, maybe this would be good for me, I add it to a list. I try to be organized. And there are other things that I've tried. There's something called Pod Match, and it's a place where people can promote, find guests, and also find podcasts. And I go to a podcast conference every year. I've spoken twice at Podfest, just this last January and last year. And there's also a podcast movement is another one in the US. And I don't know what's in Europe. But those are great places to meet other podcasters and create relationships. So that's another thing that you can do. And so many people at Podfest love Podmatch. So I got on Podmatch also. And yes, I can see the usefulness, but I'm closing my eyes and I'm thinking, it's not really quite my match. I don't love using it. I'm not quite sure I haven't really analyzed why. Instead, what I did is I hired a VA this year, and we made a spreadsheet of, I say, here are people whose podcasts, who do podcast guesting, see what podcasts they've been on, and determine if you think I would be a good fit. Here's a pitch, and just get me the information. If I need to fill out a form, then I fill out a form, or together we figured out a standard operating procedure. So that's how I've been doing it now. Once you've been on a few, oftentimes, and people know that you've been on podcasts, sometimes, it just comes inbound. A lot of times, I think even before I started to do outreach, I had done enough. I mean, outreach in a big way. I had done enough that I would get one or two a month anyway. And that's what happens when you start speaking your mind is, you got to write posts or somehow show up on video. I have a TikTok following of 150,000. That was a big thing for me in terms of visibility. I had a few videos go viral that was like, oh my God, like in one day once it hit 1 million, it's like, oh, holy moly, what do I do with this? I didn't even know how to handle, 1,000 comments, let alone 3,000 comments. So you got to be careful what you wish for. Yes, it was a great thing. I'm so glad it happened, but I really felt like I didn't take any advantage of it because I didn't have the system to do it. So that's the other thing is as you do visibility, make sure that you feel like you've got the back end enough under control so that you feel like you can really take advantage of these opportunities.
That's
Is that helpful?
Super helpful, Linda. Thanks for your generosity in sharing. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And if there are any other questions, is there a place that people can ask them?
I think we're going to have to get you back because I can see that we need another hour together. So we'll definitely chat about seeing if we can get you back on this week if you have time.
Okay, and if you want, if there was, even a half an hour just to do Q&A this week, I'd be happy to do that.
Brilliant. So I've done a little post in the Show Up and Shine group already with a nice little screenshot of you. So if anybody does have any questions, just leave your questions on that post in the Show Up and Shine group for the challenge. And definitely, I'll share your links where people can connect with you on LinkedIn, etc., etc. I also think what I might do off the back of this is compile a list of podcasts worldwide. And if anybody has any podcasts to contribute, I think it'll be a fantastic resource to share, which podcasts for which topic, etc., etc. So I definitely think we'll start working on that. But I'll let you all know more when I've got a basic idea of how to do it. But other than that, I don't like keeping people over time because I know you all have appointments. So I'm going to end abruptly here. A great big thank you, Linda. That was absolutely fascinating. The recording will be available and we will pick up with this conversation over in the group and hopefully get you back soon because there's so many other things I want you to cover. Thank you all for coming. Have a brilliant morning, evening, or afternoon, whichever country you're from, and I'll see you over in the group so we can continue this conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.